And it would be, to some extent, a stretch to say that as it were, we were close friends. I mean, we were friends because of other people. He would say, well, why don't you come and use my houses? So I said, that's very kind, thank you very much indeed.
Just for the record, you've been on his private plane.
Yes.
You've been to stay on his private island.
Yes.
You've stayed at his home in Palm Beach.
Yes.
You visited Ghislaine Maxwell's house in Belgravia in London.
Yes.
In 2006, in May, an arrest warrant was issued for Epstein for sexual assault of a minor.
Yes.
The more you look into Adnan Khashoggi, the creepier it gets. This guy was literally everywhere. He was either directly or indirectly associated with some of the most pivotal worldwide stories in the last 50 years. And the ties with Epstein just go deeper and deeper. So, Adnan, we know from the previous 2 episodes I've done on him, is that he is what you call a cutout, which means he is the main arms dealer, but if anything were to go sideways, maybe getting too much publicity, bad publicity, or if anything were to backfire on the Saudi royal family, or Israel in this case too, they could easily dispose him. So why, you may ask? Well, he's technically not part of the royal family, and his father, he was just the physician for the family, but there's no direct bloodline to the actual royal family. So that's what made Adnan so valuable. Anyways, so I've made a deep dive on Epstein and his shadowy possible accomplice, which you should go watch, because in this one, it's been long overdue. I wanted to go into Epstein for a while, but I decided to take it from a different angle many people aren't talking about. It's just that Epstein didn't just appear out of nowhere, and a lot has to do with his deep-seated connections with Adnan Khashoggi. And you're probably asking, how does a New York Jew, Wall Street pedo, most likely CIA Mossad asset, and a 1980s Saudi Arabian billionaire dealer have any overlap whatsoever? Well, the answer may surprise you. Now, before getting to the Epstein and Khashoggi connection, there were some very important details I intentionally left out in the previous videos, and that is Khashoggi's personal life, his wives, and his harem. And to you, you might be like, why does this matter? Well, it connects, and here's why. So Khashoggi's legendary harem, or as he called it, his pleasure team, was a carefully curated stable of women who were flown around the world to entertain businessmen, royals, politicians, and of course himself. One of the most outspoken former members of this inner circle is Jill Dodd. As a surfer, I know who this is. She is the founder of Roxy Surfwear. Many women who surf wear her clothing, or just like her bathing suits. The currency of love in interviews with Maxim and the Daily Beast, Jill described being pulled from a modeling portfolio in her 20s, flown to Monte Carlo, and placed in Khashoggi's inner circle. She signed a 5-year contract as one of his pleasure wives. According to Dodd, Khashoggi told her she could date others, just not Saudi men, and that he could have 3 legal wives and 11 pleasure wives at a time. She is quoted, "I had been totally naive to the fact that I was there for sex," she later said. Women were selected like shopping catalog entries. Dodd watched Khashoggi's assistant flip through headshots of models, pointing to each one like, who do you like? Who do you want to pick? What do you think of her? Do you like her looks? Fees were quoted anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 contracts, which were signed. There were things that were required though, etiquette lessons, and these women had to speak properly and dress modestly and never embarrass Adnan in front of some of the most powerful people when it came down to these arms deals. Dodd says she was never physically forced, but psychologically groomed. Financial dependence and status pressure kept many of the women like herself in a very obedient position. Other women told similar stories. The New York Post published the testimony of another woman who said, quote, Khashoggi's parties and the women were tools of diplomacy. So this wasn't just about pleasure, it was geopolitical, and you can tell the strategy he was implementing here. Powerful men came to relax and sometimes to be watched. Surveillance was part of the game, and leverage was the end goal. The parties weren't just fun. They were functions. They were pressure points. They were traps. He told one of his former wives that he attracted women with a bizarre tactic. I offer them nothing but cash, total control, and status. Much like Epstein's own contact list found decades later. Quote, I was very lucky that didn't happen to me, but reading my journals, would confirm that I wasn't just making these things up in my mind. Quote, Jill Dodd, the founder of Roxy. So behind the scandals and the surveillance, Khashoggi had a family. Several, actually. His first marriage was to Sandra Patricia Jarvis Daly, a young Englishwoman who converted to Islam and became Soraya Khashoggi. They married in 1961 and had 5 children, sons Mohammed, Khalid, Hussein Omar, and daughter Nabila, who is named after the massive yacht. But their high-profile marriage crumbled under the weight of Khashoggi's public infidelities, which he was very public about. Soraya later filed for divorce and won one of the largest settlements of the time, estimated at over $874 million. Khashoggi later married again, this time to an Italian woman, Laura Binacolini, who took the name Laima Khashoggi after converting to Islam as well. They had a son, Ali Khashoggi, born in the early 1980s. There are rumors of a third marriage to Shapari Azam Zanganish, a former Iranian beauty queen and real estate investor, though details are scarce, and the marriage, if there were any, reportedly ended by 2014. So this leads us to the most mysterious man of the 21st century, and that is Jeffrey Epstein and his ties to Khashoggi now. Because now we know how Adnan operated with his personal life and with his wives, you can see the connection starting to build to how Epstein would operate. So Epstein joins Bear Stearns in '76, the smallest of the 5 major banking institutions. No degree, no pedigree, but he had charm, math skills, and zero hesitation crossing moral lines. Again, a very weird situation there. So by the late 1970s, he wasn't just another trader, he was handling foreign clients, high net worth individuals, and offshore accounts. And it's most likely through Bear Stearns that Epstein meets a man who would change his life, Sir Douglas Leese. Who was Sir Douglas Leese, you're probably asking? Well, he's gonna play a very pivotal part in Epstein's development into getting into these higher levels of society. Leese was a British defense contractor, arms broker, and fixer with deep ties to the Saudi royal family, the UK military, and possibly MI6. He helped grease the wheels of Al Yamaha arms deal, a $100 billion arrangement between Britain and Saudi Arabia that became a slush fund for covert operations. According to multiple sources, Leese met Epstein through Bear Stearns, possibly via the same elite clients Epstein was managing. Leese reportedly described Epstein as a genius at selling securities, quote, but warned that he lacked a moral compass. Already red flags are popping up. He became a mentor figure to Epstein, ushering him into high-level financial and arms-related circles. It's said that Leese introduced Epstein to Stephen Hoffenberger around 1987. Hoffenberger was the guy who ran the Towers Financial Corporation, a massive Ponzi scheme later shut down by the SEC. He hired Epstein as a consultant, paid him $25,000 a month, and even issued him a $2 million loan, which Epstein never repaid. But Lee's influence didn't stop there. Some accounts claim he also introduced Epstein to aristocrat Europeans and power brokers in the arms trade, including Robert Maxwell, father of Ghislaine Maxwell. There's also unverified claims that because of this possible MI6 connection, that's how Epstein got tied to that, which is then tied to the blackmail operations and the financial and sexual compromising, which we're not sure. Epstein himself denied knowing Leese in a 2002 interview, which is strange because Leese's son, Julian Leese, contradicted that, confirming that his father not only knew Epstein, but mentored him. Leese's other son, Nicholas Leese, also appears in Epstein's famous Black Book, suggesting a personal connection that extended beyond business. Controversial allegations have even surfaced that Epstein may have misappropriated funds from Leese, though these claims remain disputed. Information on Sir Douglas Leese is scarce. However, he did reportedly die in 2011. His life remains shrouded in secrecy with no public biography, limited photos, and almost no mainstream media coverage. But his fingerprints are all over Epstein's early ascent. So from 1983 to 1985, while the Iran-Contra pipeline pumped US-backed weapons through Israeli middlemen to Iran, Epstein managed Khashoggi's finances, allegedly bundling money for covert CIA deals. This included tracking and moving over $500 million in kickbacks as Hawk missiles were funneled to Iran. Investigative reports and leaked intelligence memos point to Epstein as the man behind the money, what insiders called a friend to the station, CIA slang for an asset. So by 86, Khashoggi's legendary yacht Nabila was sold in financial desperation to Donald Trump, as we know. A year later, Epstein joined Towers Financial, the Ponzi scheme that laundered money through Khashoggi's go-to bank, BCCI, the same bank exposed for CIA-backed arms laundering and sex trafficking operations. It's all connecting right now. But behind the scenes, Epstein was being schooled. And one of those teachers was most likely Khashoggi. Epstein didn't just manage accounts, he learned the blueprint, how to use offshore companies, how to traffic arms under diplomatic cover, and how to compromise world leaders through sex, surveillance, and seduction. So if you want to hear more about the Iran-Contra and what happened, go watch the previous episodes so I don't repeat myself. But the question now becomes, was Epstein ever involved with the Iran-Contra? And the findings are absolutely crazy. Because before I go into the details, I'm saying this so I don't get into any legal trouble, but based on thorough review of declassified records and investigative journalism, the answer is no direct evidence. However, that doesn't mean Epstein was not involved, and here is why. So, allegedly, Epstein helped Khashoggi with asset recovery and offshore finance around the same time of Iran-Contra, giving him exposure to various networks that moved Iran-Contra money. There's also speculation that Epstein had knowledge of the logistics arms like the Southern Air Transport, also known as the CIA proprietary airline, used to run weapons during the operations. So later in the 90s, Epstein helped relocate Southern Air Transport's operations to Columbus, Ohio, alongside his primary financial backer, Leslie Wexner, who we all know is the billionaire CEO of L Brands, the parent company of Victoria's Secret, and he is the Ohio resident. This is a quick tangent because it's important, but the rabbit hole here just goes crazy because in 91, Wexner granted Epstein power of attorney, which provided him with nearly unlimited power over Wexner's finances, property, and business dealings. Epstein used this to acquire Wexner-owned assets for himself, including a New York mansion and a private jet. Again, all things that look oddly suspicious and need a whole other video dedicated to them, which I won't do right now. Nonetheless, this raised flags among researchers like Whitney Webb and Mike Benz, who suggest Epstein was linked to covert logistics going back to the 1980s. But again, no hard documentation ties directly to North or Poindexter. As Mike Benz put in a 2025 post on X, I'm not alleging a formal relationship, but it's virtually impossible the CIA kept no tabs whatsoever on the financial fixer for their main illicit arms dealer during Iran-Contra.
Epstein is a part of a much bigger network, and it is my contention that the CIA has had tabs on Jeffrey Epstein since at least 1983. It would be almost impossible for the CIA to not have been keeping tabs on Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein was the money fixer and money launderer for Adnan Khashoggi, the CIA's main illicit arms trafficker during the Iran-Contra affair.
In other words, Epstein may not have had a title or an official badge, but it's hard to believe the intelligence community wasn't at least watching him. So another name tied to Epstein through the Iran-Contra is Robert Maxwell. Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, was more than just a media mogul. He was a long suspected of being an intelligence asset with connections to Mossad, MI6, and even Soviet contacts during the Cold War. A now declassified CIA document that I have here describes Maxwell's deep involvement in international political and intelligence spheres and hints at his usefulness in arms deals and information operations during the Iran-Contra era. Maxwell's mysterious death in 1991, found floating off his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, only deepens suspicions that his work for intelligence agencies may have crossed a line. Some allegations point now is that are partially substantiated, suggests that Maxwell was secretly looting his company's pension funds to finance operations linked to Israeli intelligence. So, as the fraud caught up with him, bankruptcy was closing in. Criminal charges and prison time were likely on the horizon. According to several, quote, Mossad sources, who were former intelligence insiders, began to see Maxwell as more of a liability. compromised, exposed, and dangerously unstable. So then, in November 1991, he was found dead floating off the coast of the Canary Islands, which we all know about, near his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. The official story? He slipped and drowned. But there's more. There is a rumored satellite photo allegedly showing another vessel pulling up alongside Maxwell's yacht in the hours before his death, fueling long-standing suspicions that he was pushed overboard, not fallen. Again, those are alleged claims. Maxwell's death may have been the cleanup of a man who knew too much and was worth more dead than alive. So Maxwell's role is very clear, but there's more on the Epstein and Khashoggi relation that just is straight out of a Hollywood spy movie. Here's another bizarre clue. Epstein had a fake Saudi Arabian passport issued in 1982, listing a Saudi address, a passport he claimed was for personal safety in the Middle East. Just a year after getting fired from Bear Stearns and picking up the Saudi arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi as his biggest client for his new company. So the dots are there. You just have to connect them. It's not direct evidence, but knowing that he had one of the most famous Saudi people and a year later he's able to get this passport, it makes you infer and make conclusions. So regardless, getting a Saudi passport too is considered one of the hardest passports to get on Earth. So we've talked about the Nibla in a previous episode. Khashoggi's legendary super yacht. It wasn't just a pleasure boat, it was a tool of influence, a floating operation hub where arms deals were negotiated, kings were entertained, and the world's elite let their guard down. Women were flown in, paid, prepped, some were models, some were intelligence linked, possibly some were younger than they led on to be. All were part of the setup, like Jill Dodd, who we mentioned earlier. Now, there were always cameras. Now fast forward, Epstein didn't have a yacht like Nibla, but he had Little St. James, penthouses from New York to Paris, jets and mansions, and the playbook is nearly identical, having cameras in all those places, all bugged. He created luxury environments that promoted total privacy, but he filled them with young women, often recruited from vulnerable backgrounds. He invited the politicians, the CEOs, scientists, and royals. And just like on Nibla, the cameras were always rolling. So Epstein copied Khashoggi's operation model, but sharpened it into a modern intelligence tool. Recruit the girls, control the location, bring the powerful, record everything. He used modeling agencies as his front, just like Khashoggi, but he added a new layer: psychological manipulation, contracts, NDAs, and an entire infrastructure built for grooming. The women weren't just decoration, they were bait. So, from the Vanity Fair 2003 expose, Epstein's wealth and network remain a mystery, with no public clients beyond Leslie Wexner, and speculation that his success had less to do with finance and more to do with information. Weird, Khashoggi never mentioned, but the same blueprint was being used. So by the late 1990s and 2000s, Adnan Khashoggi's influence had shrunk. His fortunes were tied up in lawsuits, failed deals, and investigations. He faced multiple arrests, including a brief stint in Switzerland over fraud allegations, but avoided long-term consequences. His role as a cutout was quite literally cut out. He quietly moved to London, living in a luxury apartment in Hyde Park. Once surrounded by Princeton spies, Khashoggi became a shadow of his former self. He died at the age of 81 in St. Thomas Hospital in London. The official cause was Parkinson's-related complications, but by then his relevance and his protection had vanished. So it seems like at the time of Khashoggi's fall, Epstein had cut ties with Khashoggi. So there's no official known fallout between the two, just a quiet parting of the ways. When Khashoggi died in 2017 at 81, he was living in Hyde Park under the radar. His legacy faded quietly. Epstein, by contrast, went out with sirens and headlines, but their paths crossed in the shadows, and what they built still cast a long one today. This concludes the story of Adnan Khashoggi, the 3-part series. I appreciate you all. If you liked it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate any feedback, and I will see you in the next one.